Hello, good morning, 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 hello, good morning. So, anyway, in relation to positioned relative in CSS, position relative in CSS based upon the costume of antidote, because the antidote is just a anti-discrimination in relation to Victoria legal law institution. Is that the right one? Because that's where I found it a long time ago. So in that way, Ned Kelly with New Andrews at Slater and Gordon. What is anti-discrimination based upon Homo probe? Because Homo probe is just a Latin of subjects in relation to HTML website to perform the UTC. Because to perform the UTC in relation to table columns and eclipse of columns and digital of columns is just a knowing of columns. But in relation to fluid column, by seduction of points, because years and years later the browser changes because it updates, right? So in so to so the CSS 38.5 and 38.6 is just a number of collapse in relation to pie chart and to equals pix, which is PIX and which is PX5 in relation to margins, and in relation to margin by the wrapper, which is WRAPPER, is an outer grid. So of the outer grid of an outer grid in a web design, how did it form into the next one to select Brendan? Because in that time I was just showing Brendan how to code the website, and it was just like which is wrapper, and then content, and then content in the content. So wrapper, content, content. So in that way, with the wrapper, it browses through the layer of the topron, which is the outer layer. So in that way, which is the outer layer, how does the grid work in relation to your fluid for CSS? Have you done fluid before in relation to CSS, or is brand new one? Because the fluid expands the browser. So in that way, when it expands the browser, how can it collapse into a smaller screen? Like that, is it? Or like that? See? So in your media, like tablet, mobile, the smaller the screen, the fluid matches its screen, sort of. But when it does that, how will your pictures and content be collapsed equally, instead of like a long paragraph and then with a smaller screen it just shows a little bit of paragraph and you can't read the rest. Oh. And if you have pictures on it, your pictures might be up there because it's outer instead of matching the fluid. So if you want, you can do some research on the internet to understand fluid. The fluid margin is a timer to actually lapse itself into the inner wrapper. So wrapper, content, inner content. So in that way, with the plexing 1, 2, it eclipses into 5, which is a circle. So in that way, with the TV guide, when you read content on the internet, on your media, how does it fluid itself into the center? Because if it does that, then it can go like that into the expansion. So the smaller the screen is readable, but the bigger the screen is unreadable. Why, Brendan? Because it's a fluid of eclipse. So in that time, when it eclipses itself into an expansion by longer content, then it expands into the longer way, so out of your screen. So your content can't be read. And also, in that way, with your pictures on your website, the center will identify where the street is, rectangle. So when it does that, it will work out the fluid. So when you work out the fluid in your screen projector, it extends more. So when it extends more, how can it centralize your picture to your laptop? So the first way to do is the wrapper, W-R-A-P-P-E-R, the content and in the content, paragraph, which is this P, like that, and end P. So in your content of paragraph P and P, when it extends to the outer wrapper, the inner content is not measurable based upon padding, P-A-D-D-I-N-G. So in that way, if we cannot conflux into the inner content by margin, which is M-A-R-G-I-N, auto 0, the browser cannot identify where the fluid is. So when it does that, then it cannot content into your media, which is laptop. So in that way, which is laptop, your pictures is like, when you design it, the pictures is here, but when it fluid, it goes in there. Instead of this top level, it goes down here, and your content goes, it's all over the place. So in that time with your wrapper, W-R-A-P-E-R, the search engine optimization is still flexible. Yes. So since it's still flexible, the content is not in DB database. Why? Because it goes out. So whatever you write on your website, it goes out. It doesn't get stored into your database. So therefore, it fluid into the mesh. And when it fluid into the mesh, the CSS 3.6 and 2.5 is only XMG, because the XMG is a table of second grid, because the table of the second grid is a doublement of knowing how to extend the content. So within your paragraph, it extends its content, but if it looks messy in the new browser, once it got updated, then the computer system will mesh the third grid in relation to the database. When it mesh into the third grid in relation to the database DB, it will run from the one word key phase, PHASE. So Brendan, searching. Brendan is a tart. Okay, so in Google search engine it goes, Brendan is a tart. So what kind of content is a tart? And what kind of content is Brendan? Because there's a lot of Brendans. No, 0 points. There is a lot of Brendan is a tart. So there's a lot of is and there's a lot of a. So in a lot of is and a lot of a, what tart? So when someone search is a tart, how can we compromise the extension in relation to collapse? because Waterloo, once we have vector graphics in relation to our background, the mesh will fluid in relation to the next 30 pxe, which is the center circle. So in that way, when it does that with the fluid, it will conform into the table database, because the parama of the table database will be Brendan Todd. So in that way, with the outer content, if Brendan's Todd is out, will it store into the database? So if it does that, it will manuscript the Java in relation to the second table. So the second table is only the column of 3fx and 5cs in relation to 21px. And in that way, the parama will identify that Brendan is not in the table number 5. It's just a word. So in that way, all users and all business people who has a website with one name, your business name, where is the identification in the table of the DEBA? So, evil Brendan, press Brendan. So in that way, if there is an evil Brendan, press Brendan, where is the second content of the word in the storage of the database? So in that way, the monophone of the parama will identify why Brendan is here, the Todd is outside, the evil is in here, and the press is here. So in that way, when someone search Brendan is a Todd, what other image will appear? Brendan, or Brendan, or Brendan. So since then there are Brendan, or Brendan, or Brendan, that means there's only 3 images are Brendan. But since this is our Brendan, then in our Brendan, the internet marketing is not a Apolloson in relation to our fast thinking. And in relation to our fast thinking, 1 minute Brendan, next minute Brendan, third minute Brendan. So in that way, 3 minutes is Brendan. So since there is 3 minutes of Brendan, when someone search, they go, my old school friend. Oh, I can't believe that. Oh, so which one, Brendan, is there fake art? So when a person react that they have not seen you for so long, or so long after school, they don't remember what you bloody look like, because you're grown. So in that way, if their secretary is tart, then how do we know that the person searched Brendan for a tart? But in that way, when they do, if they does, then the search engine is only composer. So since the search engine is only composer, math 10, 6, 4, Brendan. Within Brendan, without Brendan, with sorta Brendan. Is it true? Well, or is it accurate as yet? Because the internet marketer is only a searcher to Dior, the Chanel. Oh, easy. So in that way, Todd, Brendan, Brendan, Brendan. So in which way are they searching for to program the database in relation to your name? but within your name, heaps of people named called Brendan. So in which table are they with you? 19th century, 21st century, 55th century, 34, 55, 21, Paul Graham. So in that way, when you are inside the table, Brendan, what parama is the confirm of searchers to know that Tart, Brendan, 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 Brendan. So since there are more Brendan, what other Brendan will impose into the outer frame? Because the outer frame is just Brendan, but the inner frame is just bread. But the outer content is just Brendan. So in that way, since it's just Brendan, how do it collapse into the dibula of Sir Funk? So since Sir Funk is here, Brendan's here, Brendan's here, Brendan's here, content, text, content, Brendan. So within that parama, how do the searchers know that they are selecting any types of Brendan? So, but your image, it's outer, because they can't see it in relation to media, mobile. So when they can't see it, they think, oh, Brendan, it's just a bread bone. I mean, it's just a bread bone. How does Brendan, Brendan, and Brendan is absolute mananan in relation to Brenda. And in relation to Brenda, song, song, song. So in that way, what kind of things are people looking for? Because the first attempt is just Brendan, but the surname is Branda. So in Brendan, Branda, some. So in that way, Brendan, in your surname is a ID of the table, number 6. So since it's an ID of table, your table, number 6, where is the column to know that column 1, column 2, tab, tab, tab. And in that way, the collapse works in grid, 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 extension. So within that grid, it extends into the search engine. But then again, it is search, search, search. So the sort of the 6th grid is trying to paramount the velocity and the venation of the vertical. Ver, ver, ver. But that's horizontal. So search engine optimization, or whatever you call it, search engine optimization. Your SEO is only Brendan, but since it's only Brendan, what Brenda is Brendan. Have you enjoyed my $1 I gave you? I'm not Brendan, contemporary art. Oh please. How's your dad, mate? How's your dad? Good? Good.